welcome to the September book wrap-up, where I review all the books that I've read this month, starting with two that actually still count for the previous month, but for whatever reason I had to wrap up quite earlier, so yeah. Two books that I read actually last month. So the first one was The Stand-In by Lily Chu, which is which is a romance novel about a lady who's employed to stand in place, be like a double for a famous Chinese actress for events because they are doppelgangers. And there were some tropes, as always, when there are some sort of mixed cultures, in the sense that American and something in a book, it's always interesting to me because I can interact with a new culture. What I really enjoyed was also that our main heroine was actually Chinese and white, and the actress she was standing in for was 100% Chinese and came from there and did not live in the United States, was just there temporarily. And the author found some time to discuss what our main characters experience, how it differs from the actresses, and how her existence is somewhat invalidated sometimes by proper Chinese people. So The Stand-In gets 3 stars, and the next book that I read last month was The People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry, and I'll give it this book 3 stars. It was written quite well. I feel like the prose was particularly nice, but I just cannot rate it any higher because I did not enjoy it, because the relationship, the pair depicted in the book, was just so toxic, I feel. Or not even toxic, definitely not bad for each other, but unfair to all of their partners who they were stringing along while not being together. So just, this is not a couple that I can really get behind. And I understand that journey was spelled out well, that's why it's not lower than 3 stars, but I just don't ship these two together. Yeah, that's it. And for the rest, I'll film it once I'm back in the apartment. And those will be all the books that I read or listened to while I was on my over 2 weeks hike in the Beskid Śląski mountains. So see you in my apartment. Intro? So I'm back at my place and we're going to review the proper actual September books now. But before that, I'm actually drinking Pepsi Max, but I thought that I'll mention this beverage, but I did not drink half of this Coke. This is Coca-Cola Orange Vanilla Zero Sugar, and I think it's particularly undrinkable if you're Polish, because I have shared it with 5 people, that's why it's half empty, and every single person by their own volition has told me that it tastes like Panadol, which is a paracetamol syrup for fever and headache for children. Particularly kids Panadol is what it tastes like. Let me remind myself. Yeah, the cola flavor is not really even... What's like the audible but for tastes? Tasteable? I don't know, so that's the actual beverage, but apart from the drink, I also have this. This looks like an empty ice cream cone to you, and you're right. But this particular thing, it's called ciepłe lody, which means warm ice cream, literally. But in Polish we call ice cream just the plural form of the word ice. So warm ices is the most direct translation. What is this? This is a very out-of-fashion candy that your grandma, who really loves you, would give to you because her taste buds have been suppressed under the communist regime in the 80s, so she cannot really tell that it does not really have any flavor, and she associates sweetness and sugar with luxuriousness because of her
of the way that she grew up. So that's why she gives you this warm ice cream. This is cream flavor, is just kind of like a cheap marshmallow. This is definitely not vegan, probably not vegetarian either. I think it probably is made with like pork gelatin. Is it? No, I think this is actually vegetarian, not vegan though, because it contains egg and milk. I'll take a bite and tell you what it tastes like. That's what it looks like. Yeah, it's just like a bland marshmallow without any flavor. But you know that your grandma loves you, so you eat it. To be honest, this is a childhood flavor for me. I grew up in baby capitalism in Poland, so I still got like some of those kind of vibes. Like, for example, there is this candy which used to be called, it originated in PRL, which is the 80s and communism times, which was called a chocolate-like product. It literally, that was what it was called. Wyrób czekoladopodobny, a chocolate-like product, and we did not really have that anymore when I was a kid, but our chocolate was very much just cocoa if we were lucky, and mostly just sugar tinted brown on many candies. I mean, I am painting a pretty bad picture. We did have chocolate as well, but what I want to mention is that some types of traditions are hard to let go, and they were still there when I was a kid. That was a side tangent, so I'm sorry about that. Let me look at the books that I've read this last month. I was on a hike, as I mentioned, and when I'm on a hike, I usually try to like commune with nature. By that I mean, I don't know, it's a vibe where I can really process a lot more. I usually come back very rejuvenated and feeling great, and I can find it in myself to read more ambitious books that would take me more effort, or just are not something that I can really get to during the school year where I'm working. So the first book that I've read, it was also something that I started in the previous month. It was From Scotland with Love by Kelly Ireland. It was a romance, but a Christian one where the God was really present. And I would give it like 2 stars because it was not great, and I wish that the crime subplot was at least half of the plot. Then I would bump it up to 3 stars. And I kind of want to condemn, but I think I have to praise the accurate depiction of what Catholicism is like when it comes to explaining female suffering and pain, and in general how there is not really place for that, and women has to accept her role. It's very funny because they are in conversations. Our main character is frustrated that she is just a pawn in men's games, but the men have no empathy or understanding for her because, well, that's just the Lord's will. And the Lord's will is that the women have, though they have free will, they have no agency. I mean, it is what it is in church, but yeah, I'd give it 2 stars because it was somewhat bad, especially with this crime subplot that it has. But it had some potential. The second book that I finished was It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey. It was a romance as well, but I had a whole existential crisis over the fake wokeness in this book. I don't really want to get too much into it. I will slightly, so I will spoil this book somewhat. In general, the male love interest in this book seemed like such a catch for 3/4 of this book. But at the 3/4 mark, he just did a 180, and Kirusha, he just did a complete 180. And when he was understanding for the first 3/4, he turned to be completely demanding and made Piper, the main character, forfeit her right to space and time to process information, and just establish that his boundary for relationship is that he is entitled to every thought in her head at all times, and that's not very hot, correct me if I'm wrong. And he did that by just grabbing her arm and forcefully speaking to her. And we were supposed to be like, oh, he's so caring. In general, this book tries to paint itself as a feminist romance, but I think I am at this point in my life where unless a piece of media or an action is done for the betterment of women, it is not feminist. I'm not saying that it's anti-women completely, but just this book is not feminist, and it disguises itself as a modern romance because in the sense that supposedly the man is more emotionally, I'm sorry, Kira is licking the wrapper of her prosciutto bone. The man is more socially conscious, more aware of his own emotions, but he's not, to be honest. And my other problem is that I thought that this book takes place over the span of like 3 months, but it turns out that their whole relationship spanned 3 weeks, and after those 3 weeks the guy was angry that the woman won't move in with him and just completely commit to him after 3 weeks. In general, he checked all the red flags for a potential abuser, starting with love bombing, fast progression of the relationship, isolation because he wanted her to move in with him and stay with him and leave all her friends and family behind. It's somewhat explained by the plot, but in general, if in the second part of, I'm sure it's going to be a series, he doesn't beat her, then this is textually inconsistent. The third book that I read on the hike is one that I listened to, is one that I definitely would not get into at any other point during the year, and it was Twains Feast, an Audible original. I'll call it an audiobook, but it is a bit more than that. It is narrated by Nick Offerman and Andrew Deans, I cannot read my own handwriting, who is some kind of scholar, and they together are fans of Mark Twain's writing. And there was a letter in which Mark Twain, after his trip to Europe, planned an American feast where he just named dozens of his favorite meals. So they planned to have a Twains Feast, just a gathering of 8 people. They arranged for it to be at Mark Twain's house, and it was prepared by a, I don't know, probably Michelin star, some great chef. And this meal is supposed to be a recreation of 8 of the meals from the list. But also behind every meal, they are all kind of archaic, and I think all of them are meat when it's possible. Anyhow, they are all archaic and have a lot of stories behind them, so they do research, go places where these meats like raccoon or prairie chickens are. They interview people, they interview Mark Twain scholars. There is also a discussion by people of color and white people of Mark Twain's racism, and I think everybody is given a platform to express their opinion on it. And I won't really, I mean, the language that he utilizes in his books is definitely racist by today's standards, but the issue of whether he's a racist or not is a bit more complicated, and I think the book really explains that. In general, it is a joy to listen to, and I think, I mean, unless you're very much emotionally engaged in the writing, in that sense that it really offends you, that Mark Twain's person offends you so much that you're not really willing to listen to people talk about his, creations or stuff, then unless you're that person, I think you would enjoy this, because I don't think that they spare Mark Twain at any point. They are trying to have a genuine discussion, and also the sumptuous descriptions of these meals were just a joy to listen to. Yeah, it was good. I'd rate it at least 4 stars, not 5. It was not genius, but I'd give it 4 stars. Even when it doesn't really work out, a meal is impossible to be made, for some reason or other. The way that they go around that is also interesting. Like the culinary aspect and the historical aspect, they all come together. Next book was, I've listened to the audiobook of 2001 A Space Odyssey by Arthur C. Clarke, and this reads like fables, like fairy tales, like sci-fi, like sci-fi fairy tales, I'd say, in the sense that they are stories that can have a moral, I guess, and the three parts of the book are very, very separate from each other. I feel like they could be presented separately. They could be three very short novellas, and it is the same in the movie. In general, the book and the film were being made at the same time, but because Kubrick did not really read this book in a timely manner and some other snags, the book came after the film, and I think the book is slightly more clear about certain aspects of the story. I think Kubrick's version of the story is more open to interpretation than this, but there's still plenty to interpret in the book, which I do recommend. I mean, it's a classic, but I wouldn't give it more than 4 stars. But it was interesting. I had a nice time. Oh yeah, and that was the point after those 2 ambitious books, after which my trip was just beginning to unravel, and I'm going to talk about it once I just film and edit my vlog. But I have some other projects that have to take precedence, so I will probably release the vlog like mid-October. Anyhow, the next book was just to have a good brain time, not really mentally challenging. My Sinful Longing by Lauren Blakely. And I tend to poop on Lauren Blakely's writing, I know, but Lauren, sweetie, I'm so sorry, you did nothing wrong. I forgive you everything, because I feel that Tessa Bailey and It Happened One Summer is kind of symbolic of a problem within modern romance, which disguises itself as woke and furthering, well, female empowerment, which is not. And this is way more honest. Lauren's writing is way more honest. It is a romance. And also, I really love, I'm not going to spoil it because I really like this story. Lauren's writing is like white bread. Does it have any nutritional value? Does it really nourish my soul? Not really, but it makes me happy and fills my stomach, So this is just a story, a part in a series where 2 longtime friends get together. There is a little bit of a crime subplot, and I don't mind the amount of crime that is in it because it is clearly a romance with the focus on their relationship. But what I really loved in this book was one particular exchange. The girl had to keep secret from the guy because of professional reasons, and the secret involved him. When he learned that she knew this thing, he got upset, and because he got upset, he was quite emotional and wrote a bunch of not really nice messages. He didn't really call her names, but he did like let loose that how he's disappointed and it was unfair and she did bad, and just said some unfair things. She received these messages and was like, I know he's upset, I'm going to give him space because I'm pretty certain, because we're friends and adults, that he's going to want to talk to me and probably will apologize because I know him. And then he comes over, apologizes, says that he will resolve his emotions in a more constructive way. She apologizes for keeping the secret even though she had no intention of hurting him. She had no other way, and she knew that it would hurt him. So they just have a conversation, and in most romance books that would be like the third act conflict, and that they wouldn't talk for months. But here they just maturely resolved this conflict, and I have like a psychologist brain boner for this for the conflict resolution in this book. So yeah, 4 stars. Great book, we recommend. Speaking of white bread, the second book that I listened to was What the Hex by Alexis Daria, a novella about Latinx witches who live on an island and there's a never mind. This was just a very bland story with the drama surrounding a bruja witch wedding. It was moved way too fast. Yeah, that's my issue with romantic novellas. I think when you have just 2 hours or 100 pages, you can just set up a relationship. There is not enough time to wrap it up. And here they moved very fast, and even though the characters had backstory, I did not buy that. Next book was The Dream Guy Next Door by Lauren Blakely. This I found less satisfying than My Sinful Longing because the resolution was not very satisfying. Because the main conflict was not really resolved, but more so put away in time. There is still something which can make or break the relationship of the couple. But apart from that, it was the white bread that we were talking about, so 3 stars, I guess, just, you know. Another book that I read was a I ended up reading mainly romances except for those 2 books. The Extra by Megan Walker and Jancy Patterson. And I really love this book, brace yourselves, because of the world building. The book takes place on the set of a TV drama, and I think I would find it like 11 times less interesting if the main character, the girl, was an actress, but she was an extra in this TV. It was like a TV romantic medical drama like Scrubs or Chirurgy, the surgeons. I don't know I think that's what Scrubs is. Never mind. Medical romantic drama. And the way that the authors build the set and the dramas on it, and the characters and the actors that participate in this whole project is very vivid, and it's pretty cool because it's like it reads like a drama. So I'd say this book is like a love letter to TV dramas as a genre. It very much reads like one. It was, especially with the kind of dramas that take place within the book. What I meant to say, if romance books want to be good, usually by book standards, there are certain moral obligations towards characters and to how far they can go before we stop liking them. But those same things are very much looser and less rigid if these characters are parts of a TV drama, and so you can really forgive a lot of them if you remember where this book is coming from. So I think I'll give it 4 out of 5 stars. I cannot really get behind, like in People We Meet on Vacation, I cannot really get behind the relationship fully, or I wouldn't be able to, except it's honest with what it is. And People We Meet on Vacation attempts to talk about good-ish people, I guess. But they are not that great, and here I can forgive it. I hope it's clear. The last book that I read was Honeymoon for One by Kira Andrews, and I think that's a 5-star read for me. It tells a story of 2 men who meet on the younger guys, on the juniors' honeymoon in Australia. He's on a honeymoon for one because he breaks up with his boyfriend a day before the wedding because of a reason. Our main character is hard of hearing and has hearing aids, which come with their, limitations. And I think that this book, it feels slightly repetitive on the side of the junior character, because the senior character also is given some voice and some parts are, I think, portrayed from his perspective, but he's the narrator or the point of view of less of the book. The main character is the hard of hearing junior character, and repetitive, I mean, he's going through his emotions when it comes to the breakup, and also repetitive in the sense that the issues that he has because of his hearing loss are just repeating themselves every day, and the fact that he's broken up comes up also daily on this honeymoon because he has to re-explain the lack of his spouse all the time. And I think that can get tiring for some people, but I think that the author did justice. First of all, it's a woman writing a male-male relationship, and as far as I can give my judgment on it, I feel that it really doesn't feel fetishizing to me. It's trying to do its best to do the guy's justice, and I also think that his hearing loss was treated with respect and in a very realistic manner. I don't think there is a second in this book where the author forgot the limitations of Junior. That's what I'm going to call him. Like, there's never a situation where she forgets that he cannot hear in several different circumstances. So even if it's like not convenient and we don't want to be taken out of the moment, if he wouldn't be able to hear in these circumstances, he won't hear whatever is being said, and she will explore that. So I really, I respect the way that she portrayed that aspect of it. And with that, I'll wrap things up. The worm ice cream is good. I mean, is it good? If you're American, it's good. It's better than marshmallows, I think. Just as sweet as some American candy. Like, I don't know what it tastes like. It doesn't really have a ton of flavor. It is what it is. It is sugar in a cone. I hope you enjoyed this very short review. I didn't drink even a sip of Coke. I hope you enjoyed this review. If you did, consider subscribing, liking, or maybe leaving a comment if you're feeling particularly generous. And for the next month, the books that I'm planning to read is, first of all, I want to finish Lisa Kleypa's Bow Street Book 2 because I really like it and I have only like 30 pages left. I will also finish, because I have started Lord of the Rings Part 1. I am halfway through. I will also read TJ Klune's newest book, whatever title that was, because I pre-ordered it and now I have it. So I will listen to the audiobook. That's it for the plans. Upcoming videos. There will be, I think, a James Bond video, a Midnight Mass, the Netflix show video, and you can also look forward to the vlog. I am pretty certain I will make it, because with how much bad luck I had on this trip, I think, and how well it ended, I think it could be pretty interesting. So yeah, cheers for hanging out and bye-bye. No, I wanted to introduce you to my 2 potted plants. They actually are mine for the first time. I didn't have to borrow any from Blueberry, because she gave me one, and this one somebody had to apologize to me lately. I mean, they chose to, and I'm very grateful that they did, and that was part of the apology. So apology wrzos, that's what the plant is called. Yeah, bye bye.